Hello and welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett, across the table from Jeff as usual, but this time we're on location at Cape Gun Works in Hyannis with the man himself, Toby Leary.
Thank you for coming, guys.
Online, we got Jessica, I'm going to screw this up, Kedziora.
Oh, it's almost perfect. Kedziora. Howdy.
Kedziora. Hi. We've got Jessica online. So the focus of this episode today is the petition, the referendum petition for H41, or wherever the hell it is, 4885 or Chapter 135, more specifically now.
So it's, what have you done?
Right. What have you been doing? All right. So I guess we'll just jump into it. Toby.
Sure.
What is going on?
Well, thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Jeff, for coming down. Good to see you again, Jessica. The amazing thing about what is going on right now is how it is spreading like wildfire throughout the state. I'm really happy to report that as of a couple days ago, we were in about 50 locations throughout the state where you can sign daily this petition.
Beauty.
And there's dozens, probably another 50 locations where there's special event day signings. So the excuse that I can't get to anywhere to sign is quickly dwindling.
You're right.
And we haven't even really touched Suffolk County, which is Boston, because the county captain has been away on his honeymoon. I mean, imagine getting married and all of this. Really.
Right. That guy really needs to reevaluate his priorities.
I know. That's what I told him. But no, he's going to be back soon. And Derek from CSS Training works in Boston every day and can meet people and sign there as well. So the good news is we haven't even cracked that open yet. And we're getting hundreds and hundreds of signatures a day. It's about to go to thousands and thousands of signatures a day. So
love it.
That's really exciting news.
Ramping up. Fantastic. Yeah. So we have a signing event at Mansfield tomorrow.
Great.
But you're right. It's becoming harder and harder for people to say, well, I just can't get there.
Can't make it happen.
Can't get there. It's really hard for me to drive 5 minutes down the road and write my name on a piece of paper.
Yep. So Toby down in Hyannis, Garrett and I, you and I are both kind of South Shore, I guess you would call of Massachusetts.
Metro West, Southern Metro West, kind of. Yeah.
But Jessica, you're more Northern Central Mass. So you're new to the show. So why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do, and how did you get wrapped up in this whole petition thing?
Sure. I like to say I'm nobody. So I have no political connections. I don't have a podcast. I don't have any of that stuff. But I have been a lifelong shooter and a sports person. And I used to live in Massachusetts long enough ago that most of this crazy law stuff wasn't in effect. And I moved back here to continue school. And I got really frustrated with the 4140 shenanigans that were going on. I spent a lot of time writing letters and calling representatives and things, just getting completely stonewalled. After a while, I sort of lost focus, and then this crazy thing popped up. That was like getting shocked. I said, holy cow, I have to do something right now. I immediately started talking to everybody that I could find about doing this. I actually used ChatGPT to try to figure out how to file a referendum. And very shortly, I got connected with Goal and Toby, and we just teamed up and we started making sure this was going to happen. And less than a week later, we were in the State House. So that was awesome.
Yeah. So you all were there. So what was it like going into the State House and filing a petition with the state? What was that experience like?
It was a really interesting bifurcated experience in that it was like very corporate boring. And at the same time, it felt terrifying and awesome. Because you're like, yeah, we're standing around with some papers, whatever. But at the same time, you're like thinking about what you're doing, that you're literally participating in contrary direct democracy, and you're taking the power back from the crazy legislator to the people where it's supposed to be. And it gave me the feeling that, yes, as a nobody, everyone can do something. We really can do something. We don't have to stand up for this and just let them steamroll over everything.
Excellent.
That was extremely powerful.
I thought that the body cavity search for getting into the for getting into the building was an interesting touch. Yeah.
That was the irony of my camera guy who live streams the whole event, who didn't have his ID on him.
Yep.
And
couldn't
get into the building to go talk to the elections commission, but you could
vote.
You could get into a polling place and actually cast a vote.
No problem.
Same ID. Yeah.
So you can't go talk to the elections commission without an ID, but sure, as the day is long, you could definitely vote in any election. So the irony of ironies, and Jessica's exactly right. It was really interesting to be in there on that day and be participating in the constitutional process and take advantage of Article 48, which allows us to recall a bill that the state has passed.
Yeah.
And I would add unconstitutionally passed, even though Michael Day and Maura Healey swears that it's going to stand up to constitutional scrutiny.
Of course they do.
It's not going to pass like the first test of constitutional scrutiny unless they get an activist judge. But anyone who applies the Bruin mandate or the Bruin methodology will see quickly, just as Gavin Newsom sees in California, that all two-step government tiers of scrutiny type of precedent is going to fail and fail miserably to the Bruin mandate, Bruin methodology. Yeah, and I don't see why anyone would have a problem with that. Like, who wants a world where the enumerated rights in the Bill of Rights are subject to intermediate or two-step scrutiny, right? Like, it should be, what does the right say? Okay, let's go with that.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Right.
If
Not
it's
open to interpretation.
Right.
The words are pretty plain.
And if it's anything other than that, then it's the government has to show proof that there's analogous laws and traditions of the time of our founding era in 1791 of how there was a longstanding tradition or law that is a carbon copy of what you're trying to do. And if there isn't, then guess what? You might as well just throw it away. Don't waste everybody.
Well, there is a process in place. If they wanted to amend the Bill of Rights, if they want to amend the Constitution, that process does exist. There is a methodology for doing that. And simply saying that we want to change it because we really, really, really want to is not that process.
Yeah.
That was definitely the kicker for me, is that the entire structure of our government and society is based on this idea that we have agreed upon principles that are codified in the Constitution. And if you just smash one of them, then there's no way that any of the others can coexist with that idea. So exactly what you're saying is that any ability of the government to take away one of those arbitrarily outside of the legal process, which is just what Jeff said, is a threat to the entire structure, which is a threat to our nation and all of our society.
And exactly like what you're saying, Jessica, think about the laws that the legislature creates and the bureaucracy around that, the administration of those laws. And for decades, the state of Massachusetts has been getting away with that government interest balancing approach to laws, which it's always in government's interest.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
To sustain
I was going to say that
law.
There is a very, very large thumb pressing down on one side of that balance.
Right.
It's amazing.
I'm just wondering when and where we relinquished our right to government to grant them. Like, that's never been a thing.
It's like I don't know, is it like frog boiling here in Massachusetts? There's no, I mean, we've said it a million times, there's no meaningful opposition, right, in the state government here. And I guess, you just get so entrenched and so used to a certain way of doing things that you can essentially do anything you want as long as you're on the right side.
Well, I think there's a competing philosophy now of how our government is supposed to be structured. At this point, I think so many people are just saying, well, the majority opinion should rule the day. And that is not how it's really supposed to work. The system is structured in such a way where it's supposed to protect the minority group from the wills of the majority.
Right.
And for, the state government,
two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner, right?
and the state government, which is an extension of the people, saying that this small group of people, we're just deciding that they don't have, that we're not going to give them this access to these civil rights anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
even though it's a right in the sense of this is pre-existing government and the government cannot take it away from you, they're just saying, well, really the way we're going to look at it now is that right is a permission that we give you. And because we grant you that permission, we have the ability to take it away.
Yeah. Or to limit it or restrict it in certain ways. And it's exactly the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah, it's the government saying we are now the grantor of rights, and take it or leave it, but that's the way it's been playing out for decades.
Yeah.
I joke a lot about that phrase, you can't do that. But really, if you look at the constitutional implications of Congress, they can't do that. They can't vote away our right to keep and bear arms. They can't vote away our right to peacefully assemble. They can't vote away our right to go to the polls. They can't vote away our right to gather at religious events.
Exactly.
They literally can't. It's off limits. And I even got senators to acknowledge that they have no power to ban a certain religion. I said, okay, perfect. Thank you for acknowledging that. Now,
And stop doing it.
Yeah, right.
and the truth of the matter is that's what you're doing here with the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And then all the usual euphemisms come out. I can walk and chew gum at the same time, and no right is absolute. So
you need a license to drive a car, right? That famous old chestnut. All right. Briefly in the technical stuff. So the law was passed late July, signed by Healy in July 25th, 23rd, something like that.
this is permanently ingrained in my brain. So they passed the law on my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Second time in 5-6 years, whatever it is. I guess it's 8 years since the state has ruined my birthday. The first time was 7/20/2016.
They have it out for you. That's what it is.
That was the day, 2 days after my birthday, but I was playing golf to celebrate my birthday with family on the day that she came out with her edict. And then, this time around, it was the actual birthday. They said, let's do one better. And we'll pass it on Toby's birthday. I know,
and our birthdays are close, so it's you and me, we're in the same boat.
Yeah. And so then she signed it into law on the 23rd.
Okay, so that's the magic date. 23rd is when it was signed into law. As of this moment, there's no emergency preamble, but that's a possibility, and we'll talk about that momentarily. So according to, Article 48, did you say?
Yes.
We have the power to request a referendum on the law that was passed. Then that's what this whole effort has been about, gathering up signatures in order to do that. So a few of us, Toby, myself, Mike Harris, Jessica, we had a bunch of people come down to the State House. Actually, it was one Ashburton, right? Around the corner from the State House. Went up to the Elections Division. Now, I have to say, I'm not a fan of the government, apparatchik just on principle. But the people that we dealt with in the Elections Divisions were very professional. I have no complaints with them, as people. They were very straightforward. They did their jobs well. Yeah. So they're very nice people. Shout out to them. And then
I was surprised and delighted. It was so amazing. I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah. So sometimes if you're dealing with the non-political or, outright political arm of the government, it's not all that bad unless you're at the DMV, I guess. But that's just objectively bad all the time. But the experience was not bad. We got the signatures started, and then it was a period of time where the Secretary of State and the Attorney General had to go through their motions, right? So William Galvin, the Secretary, he had to certify, I guess, the process, and then the Attorney General sent out some emails to many of the original signers and her friends in the in the anti-gun world, basically asking whether or not people thought that our referendum was constitutional.
I found that to be hysterical, actually. I mean, I know what it was. It was the slow walk, right? It was
Yes.
the slow rollout. Make sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's by Andrea Campbell. But the truth of the matter is, when she sent that email to even the civil rights groups like Gun Owners Action League, and I believe they sent it to the Mass Chiefs of Police Association. They sent it to Giffords in every town and Brady and all the anti-gun groups.
Of course.
And she is requesting from these groups to comment on whether or not our submission of this recall under Article 48 was constitutional. And I'm like, look down at your name tag, check the signature line on your email,
right,
and realize you are the Attorney General, and read Article 48. I'm a layperson of laypersons. Like I don't understand very high level things, right? Like I'm as dumb as a box of rocks. But I read Article 48 and it's like, okay, if it involves a person or a religious group or a budget item,
yeah,
you can't challenge it.
Right. This is none of those things.
So this is none of those things. Like, why don't we go by what Article 48 says? But no, we're going to poll the whole world out there and see if they think it's constitutional under mass law for us to challenge.
We're gonna ask anti-gun groups based in Arizona, whether or not
they certainly didn't ask they didn't ask National Rifle Association, FPC, SAF, Gun Owners of America.
Why would we ask
didn't
them?
ask any of those? And there's a stunning, again, the stunning irony of the state to go, wait a minute, well, now we need to worry about the state constitution. Now, are we sure
Suddenly
that this follows the dicta that we're supposed to follow, as they've passed things in secret and they suspend their own rules and they hide things in other bills and do it, pass the law in the most backhanded way imaginable. Now, all of a sudden, for them, the process matters.
All of a sudden.
But procedurally, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, once a bill goes into place, you only have 90 days to get this whole process done. Part of that 90 days is the state deciding whether or not they're going to allow you to do this, apparently. So how long did the state take from the time you guys filed that initial paperwork for them to say, okay, we're going to allow you to petition the government and we'll send you the paperwork? And what was that time frame like?
I think it was the better part of a month. Oh, it was over a month, because we filed. Well, wait a minute. No, I take that back. It was about three weeks. It
was about there. Yeah. So the very first initial thing, obviously the law had to pass, right?
Right.
That's the first thing. And then it was a scramble to understand Article 48 and the provisions, and then to get the ball rolling. There was a certain period of time where we had to understand certain forms and formats and things like that. And then it was gathering people up to go actually file the paperwork at the State House or at the executive building. And then it was another, after that, 2 weeks before we actually saw anything from the state.
Yeah. So we got, from when we submitted to when we actually got petitions, I think was a little over 3 weeks. And the first 2 weeks was burned by Andrea Campbell doing her Constitution analysis of one paragraph. And then
which should have taken her about 2 minutes.
Right. And then finally acquiescing and acknowledging that it is constitutional, sent that out on a Friday afternoon. Sent it to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, who had just taken a red eye, I think, back from the DNC, because he was out there with the whole contingent and had to scramble to get home for other reasons we'll leave for another podcast. But and when he got back, he it happened on a Friday, right? I'm sure with everything in his world, he wasn't going to look at it until the following Monday.
Yeah. Right.
And
he's not going to go out of his way to for us.
Right. And you know what? He turned it around pretty quick. I would say he was probably on his desk Monday morning, and late in the day, Thursday, we got the petition. We got the email of the petition, which is not something that they recommend you print from. So
Right.
we're going into a long weekend. So we managed to get the format correct on the PDF, and everybody's asking, just send me the PDF. You have no idea what you asked.
No,
Yeah.
you can't. No.
And so,
No.
and so then we did do that. We got the format correct. We printed, I think, 500 initially for an event here at Cape Gunworks on the 30th. And we got the first few hundred signatures that day and that weekend. And then Monday was the holiday and Tuesday was the election.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we finally got the state to release the first 7,000 petitions on election day, the 3rd. So really, we've had these petitions in our hand just over one full week
At this point.
Yeah.
So Jessica, is my mathing that somewhere between 20 and 25% of the window that someone has to file this petition was taken up by the state trying to figure out how to not allow us to file the petition?
Yeah, that's about right. Given our October 6th deadline, it's we have so little time now, but there's, I don't know, 400 people now collecting signatures. So
Wow. That's great.
I mean, that's all kinds of awesome. From 10 or 12 to 400 in 3 weeks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we have so the 90-day deadline from the signing of the law to the date of the end of the referendum petition push is October 23rd. But that includes a period of time where signatures have to get certified, right? So when you go to your local signing location, right, you put your name on the piece of paper, that piece of paper is going to be for your town, wherever that is. If you're out in Pittsfield and you sign for New Bedford, that form has to find its way all the way to the city clerk's office in New Bedford to get certified to make sure that you are actually a registered voter in that town.
Correct.
So there's going to be some time built in there. And then once that's certified by the county, by your city elections people, then what? The paper comes back to the group? Or
To the group, yeah. It goes to the county captains. We have what we call a swap meet or a meet and swap. And where basically the people in Worcester County swap with the people in Bristol and Barnstable and Norfolk, and everybody
there
gets
you go. Right
everybody gets their county petitions sorted, and then we sort them by. So that's to get them certified by town, and if after we get them certified by the towns, then those county captains collect them again and get them to us so that we can submit them to the State House or to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, I should say. But that's after the town. So you got to think about the logistics of that. 351 towns all have to be certified at local town halls by, like Jessica said, October 6th really is the safe date because they got 2 weeks to turn them around.
The cities do?
The cities do.
Yeah, okay.
For us. And you think about some of the Western states, there's no town clerk.
You're right. They got to get that retired guy off of the pond to,
Right.
Put down his fishing tackle and come in and certify.
They got to dust off a volunteer or a part-timer and get the registrar and everybody together. And I think it's more than one person has to certify it. It's like a committee. So and they might come in one day a week. So because they don't have a full-time registrar. And so,
we have to help them understand what to do because clearly they goofed up our voters registration.
yes.
Oh, that's right. You know what? Let's take a brief little segue there. So I was able to get my voter certification. So in order to be one of the initial signers of this petition, you had to have, on the day that we went to submit the paperwork, you had to have a voter certificate, right? I was able to get mine. Eventually, I talked about it last time. They had to dust off one of the ladies there, and she had to spend probably 20 minutes looking for a typewriter somewhere in the office so that they could finally get that done. But certain towns apparently didn't do a very good job of setting up their voter certification systems, right, Jessica and Toby?
Yeah, indeed. They not only did they fill it out wrong, but they were giving people that were trying to help me incorrect instructions. And I put it to them on election day. I says, hey, you guys screwed this up. This is your job. And they're like, well, no one told me.
It's like that.
I'm like, well, I'm telling you now.
I am still so upset about this. It's not even
I'm
funny.
sorry to bring it up, Toby.
No, it is. I have PTSD over this
I believe it.
because I went through the same process. I went in. They looked at me like I had 3 heads when I asked for the.
That was me too.
Yeah,
They're like,
and
what?
and they brought out the wrong form twice, and I said, nope, not that. I need this, and I was showing them a picture of Mike's on my phone.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And they're like, well, they're looking through drawers. We haven't done this in years, and so they're pulling open drawers. They finally pull it out. Yep, that's it. That's the one. Okay, and I need it certified. Well, that's going to cost you. And I said,
What?
What do you mean? That's $10 a piece, and I needed 3 copies. Okay, like I don't pay enough taxes in this town. Now I got to pay for 3 forms to get a stamp on it.
Oh, that's baloney.
I know. And meanwhile, the group is laughing at me because Nolan in Boston, they only charge $4 in Boston.
Yeah.
But little little Barnstable is hitting me up for $10.
Jeez.
And then, so I pay $30. I'm texting my town councilor and I'm saying, this is ridiculous. And they're laughing at me. And so then I get it. Everything looks good. I had to remind her 3 times I needed it certified. So she went back in the back room 3 times, the first 2 times without getting it certified. I said, no, I told you I need it certified. She goes, yeah, and I told you that's going to cost you. And I said, take my money, please. What do I have to do to get this done right now? Like, I don't know if I'm speaking Hebrew or if I'm speaking, ancient Egyptian or what.
It's such a government operation.
I will start drawing hieroglyphics if it helps. Just please, I beg you. Next time you walk in that back room and come back out, let it be certified. Oh, okay. And here's my money. Okay. We're all on the same page. Comes back certified. Great. I'm protecting. If you know anything about me, like me and paperwork don't get along very well. So this whole petition thing is like, out of my comfort zone. Like you put a piece of paper in my hand and I instantly start to sweat and have anxiety. So now I have these 3 pieces of paper I've paid $30 for. I'm treating them like they are,
the
Constitution, and I'm not letting them out of my sight. They're in my center console. I ended up giving them to John Mawhinney saying, here you go. I think I gave them to Mike Harris. And I said, get these out of my hands. He locked them in the safe at the goal office. So he brings them on the day we go to the secretary's office. And I'm so proud of myself. We did it. We got there with the certificates, all without
finally made it through security.
Without being folded, bended, spindled, or mutilated. And no coffee stains, which is remarkable. And then we get up to the counter and I'm all there. We're live streaming. And she goes, all right, there's 2 that are rejected. And I'm like, well,
unbelievable.
And I knew it wasn't mine. It had to be Charlie Cook's because I watched him pull this rolled up thing out of his breast pocket.
It's like
We're like
it's covered in lint and ink stains. And
we're like, Charlie, where's your thing? And he goes, right here.
It is.
And it's like this. It looks like my homework from 8th grade.
Like, let me pull the gum off of there, and there you go.
And I'm like, oh, that ain't getting certified. It's on a half a sheet of paper, and it's like 1 copy all rolled up. Oh, no. His were fine. His was fine. Mine and Jessica's, because the registrar didn't write our street address, we got to not get on the petition. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I said... I was so upset. Not only did I pay $30, not only did I waste an hour of my life getting the forms, but now here I am at the secretary's office, took a day off of work, drove to Boston, to participate in this. And I don't even get to see the benefit of my name being on the actual form.
The satisfaction of it.
Yeah, that was baloney. And it was totally your town's fault too.
Right.
There was not even a space for your street address.
Right.
And in the grand scheme, it's you almost want to look at him and go, "This is your paperwork.
Yeah.
This is your form that you all certified.
I didn't make this up.
And now you're telling me that the forms that state and local and are not acceptable to you."
Well, in my town, the little old lady there had to like make the form from scratch. You know, she did the photocopier trick where she had like a piece of paper that had the town headline, you know, the town stuff on it. She put that on the copy machine with a blank piece of paper underneath and made letterhead.
Oh my God.
I mean, at least my wrong information was free. But I did have this moment. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this movie Brazil, but it's a very bizarre movie. But it is totally exactly what happened.
Yeah. Crazy or just insane paperwork. Oh man. All right. Anyway, so you guys are both on the petition in spirit. So
that's right. Yep.
I'm sure you both signed them by now.
Well, definitely. It was I believe it was a harbinger of what the actual collection of signatures is going to look like, right? So we went with 15, 2 got rejected. So that's why we can't go in with 49,716 signatures.
Exactly.
We got to go in with 75, 80,000.
Have way too many.
Yes. I would love to fire for effect and drop 200,000 on their desk.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, Garrett and I were talking on the truck ride down here, and it's the more signatures you get, the more they have to reject. And I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in the state, and I personally feel like they might get a little generous in how they're rejecting forms and saying, "Oh, well, you know, there's a little issue here, so we're just going to reject the entire piece of paper."
Oh, they do that. That's exactly what they do.
So my thought is if you go in and they with 100,000 signatures and they reject a whole bunch and they say, "Oh, you were close. You only got 45,000 signatures." That's going to make a tougher justification for them than if you walked in with 52,000 signatures and they only have to reject a few thousand. So the more signatures, the more better.
What's that?
Right now we need over 2,000 per day to make it. So there's a lot of work to do.
There's a lot of work to do.
You know what? It sounds daunting, but at the end of the day, it's every town getting 200 signatures.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's not, it's kind of like
crazy.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant? You know, the saying, one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Right.
You should be able to get 200 signatures from each club.
Right.
Easily.
And we are I consider it, we're into bonus territory with every non-gun owner signature that we get.
Yes.
And we have got thousands of those so far. You know what I mean? So now I believe this with all my heart. In the training community, we say no one is coming to save you, right?
Right.
And so if we're relying on some group to swoop in and dump money and dump, time and effort and energy into this, we're going to be sadly disappointed. So it's incumbent on us as the gun owning community to get this done. So 600,000 gun owners, this is a chip shot.
Yeah, if everybody with an LTC or an FID in the state signed it, we're done by like a factor of 10.
Right.
It's easy.
Yeah. Well, there's 180 clubs, ranges, organizations across the state.
Yeah.
100 signatures each, 50 signatures each. That's not a huge lift.
No.
Right.
It's not a heavy lift.
And even the gun shops, I'm really happy to report that we are in, I just got the list up so that I can report to you guys. And this is daily places you can sign. Obviously, Cape Gun Works. Now, there's 4 Trump stores throughout the state.
Are they still around? I haven't seen any.
Oh, yeah. No, there's one in Falmouth. And these places are going to be machines for the signature gathering.
Good.
And again, we're into bonus territory because I don't believe that all of them are gun owners. A lot of them are, but then we're in Creative Sporting Goods. We're in Dave's Sporting Goods, South County Arms, Armor Sports, Patriot Firearms School, Red Circle Firearms, Shooting Supply, HLA Firearms, North Shore Firearms, Patriot Firearms, Bear Arms, the Gun Rack, Whitney Trucking, Four Seasons,
Nice.
Mass Firearms School. Those two alone are going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Whitney Trucking, R&M Gun Vault, B&K Sales, Boyle's Body Works, which is this guy in Arlington during the illegal alien signature license, driver's license signature campaign.
Yeah.
He's like in folklore legend when it comes to signature gathering.
Right on.
And just a body shop. It's amazing. And Justin there is doing amazing work. But there's a ton of other gun stores throughout the state. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, a lot of these places I've never even heard of. And I'm like, yeah, right on. They're it's
great.
And
Fantastic.
it's daily. Ginger Betty's, she makes these amazing gingerbread cookies. She's there, got them, and awesome. Fin Fur and Feather Club and Sportsman's Den. So anyway, there's an interactive map at fightbackma.org. Which is the website that Jessica started, did a phenomenal job getting us off the ground, and has a great heat map at the bottom, which basically shows where we are in the process.
Yeah, that graphic was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's the "you are here." I love that, and so go to that, and also there's an interactive map there where you can see a pin on.
Yeah, like a Google Maps based API thing where you can see the pins
and click on it.
Yeah,
and it shows you.
Yeah, that was Wayne. Did a great job on that.
Yeah. So,
right on. All right, you know what? Let's talk about it. Fight Back MA, because this was your baby, right, Jessica? So you decided to like leverage the nerd thing. It's awesome. So Fight Back MA was your idea, but it didn't get its impetus from this, right? It was before this, or tell us the story.
No, this was this. I said I'm not on social media, and I feel social media is very vulnerable to manipulation. So I said, okay, well, what I want to do is create a website with an easy to remember name that I can slush all of my information, training resources, status, every single thing that anyone needs to know. Because as I talk to people about this, the common question that kept coming up is, what can I do? How do I do it? Where do I go? What can I do? How do I do it? Where do I go? So I wanted there to be a website that wasn't in control of any major outlet that could answer those three questions. And it has become that. It has an awesome amount of traffic. I'm actually blown away by how fast it has grown. We had an update, I think, a few days ago, and it was something like 13,000 visits.
That's great.
And early on, I just was answering hundreds and hundreds of emails. I think I've written more emails in the last 30 days than I have in the rest of my life.
Excellent. So, how did you hook up with Toby? When did you guys meet, start talking, and then kind of hitch the wagons together? How'd that work out?
So I guess I've been a fan of Toby. I've watched his stuff for a while.
Everybody's a fan of Toby. Right.
He's great. Like my 5 minutes of free time I have per day, I'm like, let me see what Toby's doing. And then when I got fired up about this, I made the website. I started spamming Sportsman's Club, Worcester County League, all the county leagues, everybody I could find with email. Say, hey, I'm doing this. Any journalist I could find, all the pro-gun various media outlets. And I was like, this is probably hopeless, but I'll give it a shot anyway. And then Mike from Goal reached out to me and said, hey, this is what Toby and Goal are trying to do, even though at that time it was early and they didn't really release very much information for all the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then I went down to their office and we just hashed out what we should do. And I said, okay, let's merge all our efforts. Let's make one pointy sword and make it happen.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The early on in the process, I was talking to Jason Guida, Second Amendment attorney, and saying, what the heck can be done? And he's the one who kind of planted the seed in my head about this Article 48 and recall this bill. Like there's a process in place in order to recall the bill and actually be a part of the constitutional process. And so I started to kick that around with him. I started to ask questions like the what ifs and the negative outcomes and what's the downside and blah, blah, blah. And he was a great resource for me as far as helping understand what could potentially happen, what the pitfalls of it were, what the positives were and the net gain of it. And then I said, okay, well, we can't do this alone. We got to get Goal on board. I called Jim Wallace, and not to tell stories out of school, but Jim said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. And I said, Jim, I'm insulted.
It's like, I'm way dumber than that. You should know that by now.
And
Surely you yes.
but because I had done a little bit of homework, I had some ways of assuaging his fears.
Some ammo.
Yeah, and so we talked it through, and I saw a little, maybe I'll think about that. Let's think about that. And that's how we left that phone call, was we're going to think about that. I started to really work through the questions that are in everybody's mind. Yeah. A, what if she signs an emergency preamble? B, what if we lose on election day? C, what if we fail to get the signatures? All these, the negatives, and then started to put them in this juxtaposition towards reward. What's the upside? The risk versus reward. Well, the risk is we don't get it done. The reward is we get it done and this bill goes on ice.
Yeah, right.
And originally we thought it would go on ice until election day this year.
Yeah.
Then we realized that was statistically impossible. So then we're thinking, okay, it'll be another year.
No.
And then we said, wait, no, it says biennial election.
That's right,
so
a 2-year session.
Yeah, it has to be a statewide election. It's not for just town elections.
That's right.
So that puts it at 2026. So we can go back to the status quo and operate as a gun store, operate as an individual for 2 years. Now, a lot of naysayers out there saying, well, she's going to sign the emergency preamble. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I'm 51% confident she won't.
Yeah. But there's actually, too much inside baseball, but there are political reasons why she wouldn't want to do that, and they're valid political reasons. There's real risks to her signing an emergency preamble, and to the naysayers, I try not to engage too much but at this point, if you're not engaged in this fight, I don't have a whole lot of patience for you, on like social media, or even in person. It's like, if this doesn't get you up out of your chair, to go write your name on a piece of paper, then I don't have a whole lot of patience for you. But I mean, what's the balance here? It's either going to work, or if it doesn't work, then there's no change from what was already going to happen.
I had one of those moments of crisis too, about, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I had been thinking about this. It had been keeping me up at night. I'd been like having dreams about it, literally in my dreams.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, so finally I just brought it to the group and I said, here's the deal. Risk versus reward. I'm going to paint a very bad picture for you all. Everything that can go wrong, that will go wrong, if it, could go wrong. And I just spelled it all out. And I said, all that being said, what do you guys say? I don't want anyone going into this with eyes wide shut and not knowing the full implications and the negative outcomes that could happen and, all that. And you can't please everybody. And everybody unanimously in the group, the core group that we found, formed, said, we need to go for this. There has never been a time in history, and I was glad to hear it, because that's how I feel. There's never been a time in my adult life of a gun owner in Massachusetts where the gun owning community is as unified, is as motivated and upset and determined as right now. They are,
and vulnerable.
And definitely vulnerable, no doubt about it. But the best way I can say it is the state has kicked the hornet's nest. I mean, they full on punted the hornet's nest. And everybody's coming out of the woodwork now saying, you know, from the muzzleloader hunter who never got an FID card,
Right.
to the Land Rover driving, Parazzi shotgun toting clay shooter, right? Who used to say, what does anybody need a fill in the blank for?
Yeah, right.
To the people who don't even own guns and they just believe in their right to keep and bear arms. They're like, I want that right if I ever choose to exercise it. I don't now. And everything in between. And so for that reason, it's worth it to take the grassroots energy and build an army. And one of the best things that the law of unintended consequences that has come as a result of this is how many people are emailing and on social media saying, I was never registered to vote until I found out I could sign this petition. I went down and registered to vote, and now I'm going to sign this petition, and I'm going to hold these people accountable on election day.
Fantastic. That's
Huge, huge. Like that, because Jared Yanis did a video on this a few months ago about how many sportsmen aren't registered to vote in each state.
It's a disturbing number.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And I get it.
I get it too. It's a philosophical thing. You know, the same person who generally, you know, hunts and shoots and all that stuff is generally philosophically the same person that more or less just wants to be left alone.
Right.
You know, they're not the people that get involved, and much honestly to their detriment lately, because.
But they also felt that they didn't have a voice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in a place
I've been voting for 30 plus years in this state.
And how many elections have gone your way?
None. I would say limited exceptions, right? But for the most part, I'm disappointed the day after Election Day in Massachusetts, which is not necessarily that surprising, right? So there's people who've become disenfranchised that just say, why bother? But guess what? Those people are now saying, wait a minute, I can do something that can actually make a difference. Mm-hmm. When I sign that petition, this is actually a brick in the wall that government's going to have to deal with because they heard from me.
Exactly.
That doesn't happen on most
That's
election days.
quantifiable. You're not getting buried in an avalanche of the opposition voters just totally ignoring you. This is something that you can do that has a positive, proactive effect.
Yeah. And
Yeah, right on. And the fact is that our Constitution in Massachusetts gives us this specific tool for this specific scenario.
yeah.
So we are using a legally, constitutionally established tool to do exactly what it was intended, to speak louder, because the ballot box hasn't been working. So now we're speaking louder.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was intended to do.
And along those lines, the system has been manipulated to make it almost impossible to actually do this because of all the scenarios we already talked
certainly.
about.
Yeah.
The slow walk.
Difficult as possible.
And so that makes it even more important to get it done because they changed, like you mentioned, Jeff, when they changed the rules as part of the process, right? A couple of years ago, we would have only needed to get 15,000 signatures. And guess what? They're like, oh, wait a minute. That's a little too easy.
We can't have people demanding their rights.
Right.
What are we thinking?
15,000? That's too easy. Let's make it impossible. So tyrants are going to tyrant. They changed the law so that if you want to challenge, it's a percentage of the last gubernatorial election by the governor's prevailing governor, how many votes they got. So, so that's how the
obscure metric.
Right.
Wow.
And so that's how the 49,716, but who's counting, came to fruition.
So it's some weird mathematical formula based on the previous governor's election.
It's a Mr. Wizard formula of, yes, how many votes were cast in the last prevailing gubernatorial election.
Yeah.
So, and 90 days to do it. And we get to control when you get the petitions. And good luck with that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have a really great point of people waking up to making their voices heard. And I find that things like being a registered voter, voting on election day, even at, with its headaches and inconveniences and all that stuff, that's a civic responsibility that you have as someone who is eligible to vote. if you're eligible to have your voice be heard, I personally think you have a responsibility to understand the issues of what's going on and then to make your voice heard. So I guess silver lining is that there's a significant portion of people that are kind of waking up to that message of, no, we have a responsibility to the history and to the pathway of the state, the country, the culture, and everything, to stand up and participate. Like these rights, if you don't exercise them, they atrophy. And that's what I think the proponents of
that here in Massachusetts,
the proponents of the bill are relying on, is that eventually your will to stand up for this is going to be so weak, you're just going to let it go.
It's true.
Yeah, that is true. And you see a lot of that. It's frankly a little scary to me. But
yeah, because you can jump into online forums and you see people say, well, what is this really going to do? Or, well, they can just file an emergency preamble. Or what if we lose anyway? And
that's what, and those are the people that I don't have a lot of patience for. We kind of talked about this before, but like the haters, the naysayers, right? I don't know if they really feel this way or if it's like some way to justify their own laziness. I don't know what it is.
Well,
but, maybe the people who say this is never going to work, the people who say, oh, we're never going to get enough signatures, or, if we do, then she's going to sign an emergency preamble, or we'll lose when 2026 rolls around. What do you say to those people?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there's two, I believe, categories of that. One is the people who haven't lost sleep over this, like me, that thought through all the possible outcomes, right? And I've had people, like elderly men, come in basically hunched over in a walker, genuinely concerned, saying, what are you doing? Like, do you realize we could lose on election day? And so I said, yeah, we've considered this. And failure is not an option. No, I'm just kidding. I just said, but what, he's genuinely concerned about this. And a lot of people have these questions. So I don't automatically dismiss them and say, you're too late to the party. I'm willing to answer those questions for you, but we have some great precedent in Oregon under ballot 114. It was a ballot question, an initiative that probably Giffords or one of the Moms Demand or whoever initiated, and they got it on the ballot, which basically voted away their right to keep and bear arms to a certain extent. And it's almost a carbon copy of our law in certain aspects, especially the assault weapons ban.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's almost like they talk.
Yeah, it's almost like that they're really organized. But they did it. They got it passed by like 51% of the vote on election day. And so Giffords in every town and Moms Demand are all doing a victory lap. And then the good people of Oregon challenged it. And the judge said, hey, you have a constitutional right. You can't do that. You can't vote away your rights on election day as a people. The only way you can change your rights is, as Jeff mentioned earlier, through a constitutional amendment. You can't vote them away. And that's the thing we've been saying about the politicians. Like, hey, you can't vote away our rights. Number one, you're not the grantor of them. Number two, you lack the constitutional power to do it because of the limits on you.
Yeah, you don't have the authority.
Right. So for the naysayers that say, we could lose on election day, I agree. We could, but 2 years from now, a lot can happen in 2 years.
Right.
We have the Supreme Court is taking a hard look at Snopes v. Brown, which used to be Bianchi v. Brown out of Maryland. Firearms Policy Coalition just filed for certiorari at the Supreme Court for that. And so that could be an assault weapons ban case that is taken to the Supreme Court in the 24-25 session, which would be huge because the Supreme Court could strike this down while we're in limbo. And not to mention, there's already several 18 to 20-year-old cases that have been struck down in other,
that's right.
I think 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 different circuit courts of appeals. And there's no circuit court split on that, so the Supreme Court probably is unlikely to take one of those cases. But Massachusetts could become the Supreme Court split. So if we bring it to the First Circuit, if we lose in district court and bring it to the First Circuit and lose, now there's a split. So the Supreme Court could take a hard look at that. So a lot can happen in 2 years. But the truth of the matter is, and I apologize for construction noise.
Hey, making improvements, man.
The show must go on.
We're on location.
That's right. Between that stuff and the sound of freedom going on behind us.
But with all that being said, if we lose on election day, we're going to sue.
Yeah.
And if we win on election day, great. We can go back to challenging the laws. And I hope this is the way it's looked at, is if this gets put on ice for 2 years, in that 2-year period, we might lose standing on a certain couple of issues for this bill. Oh, well, let's go back to the already on the books unconstitutional laws and sue for those. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which, I mean, from the downside perspective, even if you lose the election, okay, you're in the same boat you're in now anyway.
Right. What's the downside? What's the downside? From
a perspective of downside, we had these, discussions amongst, the goal folks and everybody involved, and it's like, I personally, I don't see a downside. If you're going to go down either way, why not go down swinging?
And take 2 years,
right?
And do something the state would not allow, which is an actual discussion about the law that passed.
Hey, even all of just to throw a finger up at the state. Yeah, why not?
You drag that stuff out from behind the closed doors and into the light,
and you have to address it. And hey, we saw like the fantastic work you guys did, Jessica, the work you've done. These grassroots efforts of someone just saying, hey, you know what, I'm tired of it, and I'm going to put some skin in the game here, and I'm going to get involved. We wouldn't even be at the table today if it wasn't for someone saying, hey, I'm going to make a road sign against HD 4420. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't be in this speak up. Yeah, and we wouldn't be in the spot now if someone didn't say, hey, you know what? I'm going to make a website and put this out there
on my own, and along with cool graphics and maps and everything else. And it's like
I mean, I've always been someone that speaks up about kind of the elephant in the room. Like, there's all this stuff going on, and people are like, well, I'm afraid to say something. I'm like, well, I'm going to say something, because if no one says anything, then it's going to keep on going.
There you go.
So for all the people that say, what is this going to do? And I don't know if the one I love is, well, I don't want to put my name on a list. It's like, buddy,
it's like,
first of all, already in your pocket. You have the LTC there anyway. And, your phone's connected to everything. And I'm pretty sure
you're on a list.
So
it's the other subset, right? We have the naysayers that say, well, we're going to lose. And then the other subset of those people are the ones that say that doing this is going to tickle the dragon's tail, right? It's going to empower the legislature and the anti-gun people to take more of your rights away. Because if you lose, then you're basically, you're telling the state that, this, I have to chuckle when I hear stuff like this. It's like you're basically telling the state, people really do want gun control, so that's going to empower them to pass more laws. It's like, look around you, man.
Hey, the person that's breaking into your home, is it possible for you to lose that fight? Absolutely. Doesn't mean you don't engage in the fight and you don't stand up to defend yourself when someone's coming through your front door. So whether the person coming through your front door is a criminal looking to do you harm, or if it's the state looking to do you harm, you're in the same boat either way. Just my personal opinion.
And what more evidence do you need that if you're worried what they're going to do in the future if we do something here?
Right.
They're going to do it anyway.
This is all the more reason you need this right. If you're worried about
they've been doing it for the last 25 years.
Exactly. So it's not like they're going to, if we decide not to do this, then they're going to suddenly go, oh, you know what? Let's leave those gun people alone. They're okay.
Yeah, and we are the frog that has been boiled for the past 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And every incremental loss of liberty has added to the long game, that they are in it for the long game. They know they can't ban guns overnight.
Right.
So they're willing to do the death by 1,000 cuts, methodology, which is ultimately going to, one day we're going to be like, what happened to our gun rights? Yeah. And I think we're very close to that right now. But the truth of the matter is, it's an insatiable appetite for restrictions, infringements, and ultimately, as Gabby Giffords came out and said, guns, no more guns.
Yeah.
They're saying the quiet part out loud.
Turn them all in.
30 years ago, it was, no one's coming for your guns.
Right.
It's common sense gun control.
As we change our name from ban handguns to,
Right. And so it was back then, like we've seen every iteration. In the 70s, it was ban all handguns,
right.
Saturday night specials. Then it went into the, machine guns, and then it went into assault weapons ban, and it went from
those scary plastic guns.
Yeah, Saturday night special to assault weapons to gun control was the buzzword. And then we've seen it morph from that to high capacity magazines. And now it's even taken on a new iteration called gun safety.
Yeah.
It's no longer gun control. It's gun safety.
Yeah.
And the common sense gun control is even gone. Like it's all about gun safety. Who doesn't want to be safe? Don't you want to be safe?
A really important point here is also that the Second Amendment is on equal footing with all the other amendments. Mm-hmm. So this becomes a template to curtail our other constitutional rights. And we know that they're already attacking the First Amendment very strenuously through corporate controlled media. So these things are creating legal precedent to limit the scope of the other constitutional rights. Obviously, firearms rights are very important to us, but all the other rights are equally under attack with this legal structure.
Yep.
It's really critical that we stand for this.
Yeah, and I think you raise a great point, Jessica. There's one thing that, for the person who's not the nuanced gun owner, we understand the implications of the restrictions on gun ownership. But for the people outside the echo chamber, I had a woman yesterday say to me, why is Massachusetts against gun laws? Like she genuinely didn't know. Like she thought that, wait a minute, licensing, universal background checks, assault weapons bans, high capacity magazines, red flag laws, all that stuff sounds like a good idea. Why are you against that? And they don't understand the nuance of the equal footing of every right. And why didn't that stuff matter for 200 and plus years?
Yeah.
Why? Because we took care of the criminal element. And now we have this perfect storm of, we don't have the resolve to lock away violent felons. The very first thing that gets pled out is the gun charge, because that would lock them up for 18 months.
Exactly.
And we need them to be back out on the street yesterday, so they plea out the gun charge and charge them with the whatever the crime was, and give them time served or personal recognizance or an ankle bracelet, and say go and do no wrong. And then so we have no resolve to lock up the violent people. So that soft on crime policy has taken root in every aspect of our life in Massachusetts. Then we have restrictions on the people you don't need to worry about, which what's the natural result of that is that good people will run afoul of the law and lose their right to keep and bear arms by running afoul of the law.
Yeah.
So you're going to reduce the amount of legal gun owners because they are trying to they're probably just ignorant of the checkerboard of new laws coming out that they have to try to, navigate through, and ultimately run afoul of it, and then lose their right to keep and bear arms, lose their license to carry. And then the last one is the violence that is the result of letting violent people back out on the streets is the narrative that they use through that corporate media to justify further restrictions on gun rights. And it's this self-feeding continuum that they need violence on the streets in order to have the media narrative in order to restrict our rights further.
It's just circle, right? Self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's all about pulling in and concentrating power and authority to fewer and fewer and fewer people. All of that. So, Jessica, people ask all the time how they can help, how they can get involved, how they can participate, and how they can stand up for the Second Amendment rights. So could you let the listeners know if they are looking to volunteer, to sign petitions, How do they do that?
I mean, I feel like the most powerful thing that any single person can do now, which is like the minimum time investment, is to go to the Fight Back MA website and tell their friends about it. One of our largest challenges
fightbackma.org. Fightbackma.org.
Thank you. Is to make people aware of it. We definitely need more volunteers to specifically distribute, promote, and collect signature sheets, and we want all the people that want to do that. But if you only have like 10 minutes or something, or 5 minutes, or even 1 minute, be aware of what's on Fight Back MA and the coalition website, and then tell your friends. Put it on your Facebook, put it on your Instagram, put it on your Twitter, whatever you have, or just tell people at work, tell people at whatever social clubs, or when you're walking your dog, or at the supermarket. I mean, eventually people will stop talking to you, I think, but.
And if you're going to go, bring someone with you. Take the family out. Take your family out to breakfast, and then on the way home, hey, we got to make a quick stop.
And this is a sprint. It's not a marathon.
Yeah.
This got to get the message out to everybody. Like every single person that signed for me, I said, please tell at least 2 of your friends so that we could get the exponential growth. And I think the website has reflected that is starting to happen, but we have so little time that there is no amount that is too much.
Yeah, this is all hands on deck, right? Full court press, all of the good euphemisms. This is the time to get it done, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we fall asleep at the wheel on this one, I don't think we're going to have an opportunity like this again for a long time. And it'll rely on that rider coming over the hill at sunset to save us. And as I already mentioned, there's nobody coming to save us. Yes, we can rely on the courts to finally get in line with the Bruin methodology. Yes, we can rely on national groups that have national money behind them to come in and litigate every aspect of this 116-page bill, which is going to take a decade.
Yep.
Yes, we can rely on the Supreme Court granting cert to certain aspects of this. That could take decades as well. All of that being said, what's the most efficient use of time, effort, and energy is getting out, getting signatures collected, getting them submitted, and in a short period of time, a short window of opportunity. It's going to involve us getting off the couch. It's going to involve us getting out and doing some things.
Oh, how dare you suggest what?
And
Can't sign it online?
And and that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. I'm glad you said that, because there is this change.org petition going around.
Oh, yeah. God,
so
yeah.
in our signature collection efforts, someone's like, people have started to say, I already signed online.
Like,
no, you haven't.
No, you didn't.
You did not.
That has no weight or bearing in the State House
whatsoever.
at all.
Right.
They use it in case they run out of toilet paper. It has it's nothing. It's wish fulfillment. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, what we're doing has the force of law, and that's the key difference.
Right.
We have the force of law.
Yeah, and so I don't think there's any falling asleep on this. I called a bunch of people yesterday and said, look, you guys buy a lot of guns. I know you do, because I sell them to you.
Thank you, by the way.
Yes. My kids and my grandkids, thank you. However, instead of giving me $1,000 or $1,500 deposit on your next Nighthawk, I want you to take that money and donate it to the Civil Rights Coalition. Because, again, we have a short window of opportunity to get this done. We got to raise a couple $100,000 in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
In order to get across the finish line. And
this is not just signatures, it's also money.
Right. And I'm already counting on their signature. I'm taking that for granted. Now it's as the Reverend Jackson used to say, some of you can write a check. And I say that because it's true, number one. Number two, it's not as cool and flashy as the new gun, but it is 10 times more, it's 100 times more important in order to get across the finish line with this and make it so that you can go buy that next gun that you actually want, and not the one the state dictates that you'll be able to buy.
Yeah, history doesn't remember which flintlock was at Lexington Green. It remembers the people that were at Lexington Green. But as we're kind of, running towards the end of the time, Jessica, do you have parting words?
Tell your friends. Sign the petition.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Well, so Toby, earlier you mentioned that this is an insatiable appetite for restrictions. For my part, I'm hoping that maybe they bit off a little more than they can chew this time, and they really woke people up, because this is everybody. This is everybody now.
I agree, and I think that there's going to be some amazing upside results at the ballot box. I hope that people remember on November 5th who it is that signed this unconstitutional abomination into law. Even if they don't think like the average gun owner, they will say, you have gone too far and you have stepped over the line. I am going to vote for somebody who I don't agree with their key issues on, all because you voted against my right to keep and bear arms on election day. And if we can change over a few seats, that'll send a remarkable message to the State House that this is off limits. Don't do that ever again.
Absolutely. Well said. All right. Jessica, thank you for joining us remotely from, where are you anyway?
I am in Shirley, Mass.
Wow.
Which is between Groton and Leominster.
Okay. All right.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah, right. It's like, okay, thank you.
It's like northeast central. So it is precisely 2 hours via public transport to MIT.
To MIT. Not that you would know, right?
Not that I would know.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time and joining us.
You're welcome.
Toby, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having us down to the lovely facility. It's always a joy to come down here. I told Jeff on the way down, I am not going to buy a gun this time. I promised myself that I would not buy a gun this time.
Not if I can help it.
All right. The final message here is get out and sign this. There's not a lot of time. There should be plenty of signatures coming, but the time to step up and do something is right now. When you hear this, get up, get out of your house, get down to a signing location, bring your friends and family and put your name on the piece of paper. This is what we need.
And you can find the signing location at Fightback MA.
Fightbackma.org. Yeah, absolutely.
Fightbackma.org.
Perfect. Then that is actually going to do it for today. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thank you for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at The Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.